I think everyone knows the policy when it comes to shark fountain pens. If you're using a fountain pen, big tick there, and your fountain pen is shaped like a shark, like the Jinhao 993, I think we can all agree that it's probably going to be the best fountain pen in the world, you know? These pens are brilliant, and of course they look like a shark. You know, what's a Mont Blanc Meisterstück when you have a Jinhao shark? You know, those pens are useless compared to these Jinhao sharks. And obviously there wasn't enough shark fountain pens in the market because a brand called Chren, or Chren, have introduced their own shark fountain pen, which obviously is going to be the best fountain pen ever made, which is why I'm going to talk about it on this channel today, because as well as looking more like a shark than the Jinhao shark ever managed to, and I'll get into that when I talk about the design, this pen writes a lot better than the Jinhao shark, and as well as that, it's also cheaper, surprisingly, than the Jinhao shark. I was able to pick up this fountain pen for about $1.50, compared to about $2 for the Jinhao shark. So sorry, Jinhao shark. There's no more room in this world for two shark pens. Only Chren. Okay, that might have been a weird intro, but I do have to stand by what I said. This is the Chren fountain pen, and it is the first fountain pen that I've seen from this brand. And I was actually really surprised to see someone else attempting to make these shark fountain pens. And when I bought this pen, I was pretty much thinking that this is just someone that's rebranded a Jinhao shark, maybe changed up the nibs or something, but this is pretty amazing because these shark fountain pens aren't a knockoff of the Jinhao sharks. These are actually much better designed. These use very different designs. These use different feeds, they use different converters, and they use very different nibs. So I gotta say, I was so surprised at how good these fountain pens were, considering I'd never heard of the brand before, considering that I'd only paid $1.50 for the pen, and obviously it's a shark pen. So let's just get into the review, and let's talk about the pen. So first of all, these shark pens are obviously crazy long. It was obvious with the Jinhao shark that it was a long pen, and this pen actually beats it. Capped, it's 17.4 centimeters long, uncapped, it's 17 centimeters long, and you can't really post this pen because the back of the pen is so thin. If you want to post the pen, all you're going to do is put the back of the pen onto the cap, and it's just going to fall off. And in terms of the weight, this is obviously going to be a light pen. It's about 10 grams with the cap on and about 8 grams with the cap off. So in terms of the ergonomics, I have to say the ergonomics of this pen and the Jinhao shark pen are very similar. So this is obviously a crazy long pen and is a pen that doesn't have a clip on it. So the ergonomics is not going to be terribly great. You can't really put it in your pocket because you're going to risk snapping the back of the pen, and the back of the pen is only ½ centimeter in diameter, so you can easily snap it. And as well as that, you can't really put it in your pocket and clip it because there's no clip on it. I really think these pens are just designed to be a novelty, and I really don't mind that because it's obviously a shark. And it's designed to be put on your desk to leave it and just use it when the time comes and you pick it up because it's a shark and you want to show everyone how good your shark pen is. And this pen is much longer than the Jinhao, which means that it's even less portable than the Jinhao was. In terms of actually using it goes, I'm pretty sure most people can use this pen without posting it, well, without the need to post it, which is alright because obviously you can't post this pen. In terms of the actual grip, they have gone for a lamy style grip, 2 facets on the section of the pen, and I don't like the lamy style grip all that much, but on this pen, I guess it's alright. I can write with this pen for extended writing sessions, half an hour, 40 minutes, and it doesn't bother me all that much. I'd much rather a cylindrical grip, but This one isn't that bad, but the good thing about this grip is it's pretty resistant to oils. It doesn't get all that slippery over time, which is really good. In terms of the weight, I will say this pen is probably on the lower limit of what I like to write with. 8 to 10 grams is not all that much for a pen. I'd much rather something that's closer to 20 grams, but this pen is certainly usable. It's probably about the same weight as a rollable pen. I think a lot of people would rather a pen that's a little bit heavier than this, but it is certainly useful. One thing that I will say is annoying is because you can't post this pen, there isn't really much there to stop this pen rolling away if you put this pen on a sloped surface. Thankfully, because this cap, however, has a 3 different fins, the cap will not roll, but here's the thing. The cap doesn't have a nib that, if rolls away and drops on the floor, doesn't break. The rest of the body does, and I'd much rather see a pen where you can either cap or have a roll stop so you don't possibly have the pen roll away and damage the nib. In terms of the aesthetics, I gotta say, this is the thing that really elevates it above the Jinhao 993. It looks a lot better than the Jinhao Shark. It actually has a much better shark face, and the shark face is actually more pronounced. The eyes and the gills and the mouth are actually a little bit deeper, and you can see them a lot better. And as well as that, this pen here has 3 fins compared to the Jinhao Shark, which only has 1 fin at the top. And as well as that, this pen here has a proper tail, which looks really, really nice. Whereas the Jinhao Shark only has a more traditional rounded off back, which looks like the Pilot Plumix. And considering that it pretty much is a knockoff of the Pilot Plumix, apart from the fact that it has a shark face, I'm not terribly surprised that Chren opted to go a much more different, much more shark-like design. In terms of build quality and materials, I gotta say, this is where it loses a few points. I'm not gonna say that the build quality is bad, but at the end of the day, this is a $1.50 pen, and obviously they're going to skimp out on manufacturing and quality control to make this pen, be $1.50. And when you pick up this pen, you can instantly feel that the plastic is not of the highest quality. The pen is certainly built to a standard. It's not going to fall apart, but when you put some pressure on parts of the pen, there is a fair bit of play with the cap. There is a fair bit of play where the back bit of the tail plugs into the main barrel of the body. There's a fair bit of play with the threads, and it's stuff like that. But it is a $1.50 pen, and at the end of the day, they have to make money too and sell it for $1.50, which is alright. This is not a Mont Blanc, this is a shark pen. Taking a look at the other parts of the pen, let's take off the barrel. The threads are plastic threads, which is alright. The material around it is certainly thick enough for me to give it the thumbs of approval. I'm pretty sure you could apply a fair amount of force, and I could confidently say you're not going to break the threads of the fountain pen. But annoyingly, even though this is a plastic threaded fountain pen, there's no way that you're going to be comfortably eyedropping this pen unless you epoxy the back of the barrel, because the tail part actually slots into the barrel. There is a little bit of air leakage, which means if you do not eyedrop this pen, you're going to have to go ahead and epoxy this back bit up, which is only like a 5-minute process, but it is something to note. The next thing that I will say is this pen uses what looks to be the Wingsung converters, but I've had a look at Wingsung pens and this converter, and there's no way that they are the exact same converter, because looking at the size of the hole on this converter, it's actually pretty gigantic, and there's no way that this would fit on any Jinhao that I have or any Wingsung. It is not a hole size that I'm aware of. It's obviously one that they've come up for this pen. I'm really not sure what size converter this is, but thankfully they did include this converter with the pen, so unless this converter breaks, I'm not going to have to think about that anytime soon. And that's pretty much it for the body. Let's talk about the nib. So, one of the good things about this pen is it looks like they borrowed their nibs from whoever make the nibs for Wingsung. Obviously, it's not a Wingsung branded nib. It does say Chren on it, but it obviously is made by the same people who are making these really cool and really high quality Wingsung nibs. This one here is a fine nib, and like all of the other fine nibs that I've seen on the Wingsung pens, they are actually pretty small. These fine nibs are a lot smaller than the fine nibs that I'd find on Jinhao pens, and yeah, they are pretty small. They are pretty much like a Japanese fine, and considering that up until now, we usually equate a Chinese fine to a European fine, which is a Japanese medium, I'm actually surprised at how, thin this line is for a Chinese pen. Now, even though that the pen is really fine, they've obviously ground it in such a way that it's pretty smooth. I'm not saying that this is buttery smooth and it's the best nib in the world, but I do have to say that they've done a very good job for such a cheap pen. I've been able to write with this pen on really cheap copy paper as well as Rhodia paper, and you're going to get really nice writing on both of those types of paper. As well as that, it's not going to bleed at all, and it's not going to scratch on any of those types of paper, and it's also not going to dry out and skip on that type of paper. It's pretty reliable, this pen, I gotta say. It's a really nice writing experience that envies that of the writing experience I've gotten on a bunch of Lammies and Wingsungs. One thing that I will say, like all the other nibs that have this sort of style, none of them are going to have all that much flex to them, and this is, this is probably even worse than those pens. Some of those pens you do push down and you get a tiny amount of line variation. This thing, you're not going to get any line variation with this pen whatsoever, no matter how hard that you push down on this nib, which does make it a little bit boring to write with for extended periods of time. But if all you want to do is write with this pen, I see no reason why you can't do it. And I have to say, that is the biggest downfall with a lot of these Chinese fountain pens. A lot of them nowadays are really, really reliable to use. A lot of them are buttery smooth, but just due to the shape of the nibs and materials that they are using, they are pretty boring to use if you want to do something more than just write with these pens. If you want to do any sort of calligraphy or, fancy writing, they are pretty boring to use, and after a while, I would just opt to use something like a Pilot or a Mont Blanc. Okay then, welcome to the writing sample for the Chren. This is the shark pen. And the ink that I'm using today is Monteverde's Copper Noir, and the paper that I'm using, of course, is Rhodia. This is Rhodia, I think this is 80 GSM. Let's get into a quick writing sample. And that was a quick writing sample, and I don't know if you can hear on the audio, but there is certainly a little bit of scratch to this fountain pen, and it's certainly only on the side strokes. But there is certainly a little bit of scratch to that. But it really doesn't slow down the writing that you do, and it really doesn't ruin the writing for me, because as I said, it's nice to write with, just a little bit boring. And you can see from the writing sample that there was no issues whatsoever. There was no skipping, And as well as that, there's no line variation, there's no natural line variation to the nib, but, you know, the pen wrote, and that's really all you can ask from it. In terms of quick writing, this pen can easily keep up with quick writing, no doubt about that. Now, in terms of line variation, as I said, there's pretty much no natural line variation to this nib, whether it be a side stroke or an upstroke or a downstroke. In terms of adding pressure to the nib, this is no pressure, and I'll slightly add a little bit of pressure. And this is pretty much as far as I am willing to go, otherwise I might risk damaging the nib, and that's pretty much no line variation whatsoever. So this is no pressure, and that's as far as I want to go. There's pretty much no line variation whatsoever. In terms of reverse writing, wow, that was terrible. Reverse writing is always surprisingly good for these Chinese fountain pens. No clue why. Way better than my Mont Blanc for reverse writing, but I never reverse write. And in terms of wetness, for a fine nib, surprisingly wet. And that is pretty much it for the Chren Shark pen. And there you have it, a review of the Chren fountain pen. This is hopefully a brand that I'm going to see a lot more of in the future. I'm always happy to see another Chinese fountain pen brand pop up, and especially a brand pop up that is making really high quality pens with really nice nibs and is not afraid to make a few goofy little designs, such as the design that you see on this Chren fountain pen. In terms of actually buying these, would I recommend people to buy them? Well, here's the thing. It is $1.50, so it's not the biggest commitment in the world. But I will say, if you are going to buy one of these pens, you know, either the Jinhao or this fountain pen, do know that these just are a gimmick. They are brilliant to write with. I do enjoy writing with them, but when you actually have to use them on an everyday basis, I don't see myself using them all that often. Usually I just let them lie at the bottom of a drawer until I come by them when I'm testing out a few fountain pens or something. It's not a pen that I use all that often. And it's not because they're boring to use, it's just because they are just, you know, so big. These pens you really cannot transport anywhere. Maybe if they swapped out the nib and feed and chucked it on a pen that I could transport a little bit more easily, maybe I would use that pen a little bit more often. But in terms of shark pens, they are a gimmick. I show them to some of my friends, but apart from that, I don't use them very often. Hope that helps, and thank you very much for watching.